the Coders Campus podcast, where you'll learn how to code from one of the best teachers in the industry. Whether you're an absolute beginner or a seasoned pro, the Coders Campus podcast will teach you what you need to know to master the art of programming. And now, your host, Trevor Page.
Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow coders, welcome to this episode of the Coders Campus podcast. We've hit episode number 14 now, and today we're going to be diving into sort of putting what we've already learned in the past few podcast episodes into practice. So we are talking about tips on how to upgrade your pre-Java 8 code to Java 8 code. Make sense? So basically what's happening is that I've gone through this process, right? I've been hard at work creating a new platform that essentially hosts all the courses that I've created. It's called Professo. If you haven't checked it out already, I would recommend it because it's pretty neat. I'm pretty proud of it. And you see, I started coding this app using Java 7. I hadn't yet taken the leap to learn Java 8 yet, and therefore that's all I knew. So I was creating it with Java 7. But then I started learning about Java 8 and all of its cool new features. Now Java 8 came out in, I believe it was 2014, so 2 years ago now. I'm finally getting on board. I'm almost a late adopter, if you will. But anyway, I started learning about it Java 8. I said, these are cool. I want to start implementing some of these cool features into my Professo platform. So this app I built was more or less complete for the version 1.0, so to speak. I'm more like version 0.8 maybe right now. There's still some features I need to add into it, but it was more or less complete before I decided to upgrade it to Java 8. So all these tips that I'm going to give to you, really it's namely two big tips, two useful tips. These are going to be based on my real-world experience of dealing with the conversion from Java 7 to Java 8. So let's dive right into it. So, for loops. For loops, essentially, no more. One upgrade that I've seen lots of availability for is to replace any of your for loops with streams. Okay, so we've learned about streams already. If I go back and take a look at my past episodes, I can probably pull up what episode number we learned about streams in. Let's see, episode 10 is when we started learning about streams. Now, if you start using streams, you'll also need to learn about lambda expressions, so that's episode 9. So if you haven't heard any of these yet, I would go back and listen to episode 9 and 10, and maybe even 11, because I have some good examples of streams there. Now, having said that, once you've listened to those episodes, this particular upgrading with streams and getting rid of for loops doesn't work in all cases. Sometimes there can be complex nested for loops that become a bit tough to convert over to Java 8 streams, and maybe even just regular old non-nested for loops. You'll see with the example I picked, there's a bit of a performance hit, but I think the performance hit is worth it based on the readability that you get when you go to Java 8 streams using more functional coding paradigms. So, but like I said, for the most part, this is a quick win. You can see a for loop, you can upgrade it to your functional Java 8 stream API, and you'll get a better looking and more readable code with no performance hit whatsoever. Okay, so let's get into an example of what I ran into, and this is one of the more complex examples. So I'm picking sort of the craziest scenario and throwing it at you right away. Any regular for loop you can just take and probably convert it very easily, but like I said, this one's a bit more convoluted. So one example I saw of upgrading this code from Java 7 to Java 8 was in a controller where I was populating two different lists, so two different collections. They were called active courses and non-active courses. Okay, active courses, non-active courses. The purpose of these two lists were to keep track of which courses a particular student had actually paid for, and which courses they may have either canceled, or maybe their last payment attempt had failed, so they're sort of in a delinquency kind of state right now. So yeah, determining if they're active on the course or not active on the course. So if the course was active, then it would be accessible to the student. So when they logged in, they would be able to see the course. They can click on View the course, and they can go in and consume that course at their leisure. Okay, so if the course was not active, however, then they should not have access to that course. Plain and simple. It should say, you've either canceled your membership here, or you're late on a payment and you need to submit that payment before you can see the actual course. So let me dive into what the Java 7 code looked like, so the pre-Java 8 code before I tweaked it. And it essentially starts with three statements where I assigned values to variables. So I don't know why that was so difficult for me to say. So we have three statements. We have three lists. The first list is a list of offers. Okay, so the way my system is broken down, I break them down into offers. So I can create an offer, and I post an offer on my platform, and the offer is based off of, it gives a price, and it contains either one or more courses. Okay, because for example, my Coders Campus offer is an offer where I put all of my courses that I've ever created into one offer, and I offer it for a certain monthly price. Okay, so that's where I sort of came up with the object of offers. Okay, so I get the list of offers that say like a user has access to or has purchased or something like that. So a student has come in and purchased some offers. I'm just getting those list of offers that the student has purchased. Then from there, I'm going to initialize two array lists. One is called, like I said, active courses, and one is called non-active courses. Okay, so we have all the offers they purchased. Then we have two empty lists, active courses, non-active courses. So then, of course, I do a for loop. So this is the first flag that maybe this code is upgradable to Java 8. There's a for loop. So I have a for each loop that goes through each of the offers that the student has purchased. And inside of that for loop, I say, hey, for each of the offers, is this offer active? If it is active, then I want to add all the courses from that offer. Because remember, there could be multiple courses inside of an offer, just like my Coders Campus has many courses inside of one offer. I take all the courses and I throw it into the active courses list. So previously this list was empty. Now it's going to be populated with the courses based on an offer that is currently active. Okay, so the key thing here is I'm keeping track of whether or not an offer is active on the actual offer object. So it's not on the course object. The course object has no sense of whether or not it is active, just the offer. All right. And then otherwise, if the offer is not active, then of course I add all of the courses from that offer into the non-active courses list. So essentially what we're doing is we're populating those two lists that we sort of instantiated above. And then I need to go through another for loop, and I need to go through and get all from the active courses. I need to see if the inside of the active courses, there are any courses in the non-active courses. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying, hey, let's say someone has purchased lifetime access to course A, and then they've purchased a monthly membership to course, or I should say offer. They've purchased a lifetime access to offer A, and they've purchased a monthly subscription to offer B. Offer A has one course in it, and offer B has that same course that is in course A. All right, you sort of get where I'm coming from here? So offer A is paid for upfront in full, boom, it's active. The course inside of it is active. Offer B is a monthly subscription, and let's say that they have failed to pay their monthly subscription for this month. So that offer will be marked as non-active. Rather, all the courses are going to be put into the non-active courses list. But what happens if there's a course, the same course in the non-active courses exists in the active courses list? Okay, so let's say to put things into real world perspective here, let's say my Java super course. I have a Java super course where you go through, you learn to be a Java programmer. You can purchase that outright, so that can be offer A. So the offer A is the Java super course offer. Offer B is the Coders Campus. Coders Campus has the Java super course as well as all of the other courses I've ever made. Okay, so the Java super course exists in both of the offers. But the Coders Campus offer, this person has failed to pay for in, let's say, this month. Okay, so now they've paid in full for the Java Supercourse, and they're paying monthly for the Java Supercourse, essentially, as well as other things, but they failed to pay for the Java Supercourse. So, in this scenario, what should happen? Should I revoke their access to the Java Supercourse because they didn't pay for it inside of their monthly membership of Coders Campus? Or because they've previously paid for it for life, should I give them access to it? And the answer is, well, if they paid for it for life already, of course they should have access to it. Why would I deny them access to that course? They've paid for it already in full for life. So this is what I'm doing in this for loop. I'm going through it and assessing and seeing if that scenario is coming up at all, and I'm addressing it. So I'm saying non-active courses dot contains active course. So I'm checking to see if, when I'm looping through the active courses in the for loop, I'm checking to see if the non-active courses contains any of those active courses, the courses that have been marked as active. And if so, then I'm going to remove that course from the non-active courses list. So that doesn't show up anywhere in the non-active courses because it is an active course. All right, makes sense? Now I could also probably, now I'm thinking about it, I probably could have said non-active courses.remove all, and I could have passed in active courses. That probably would have been a quicker way to do it without an extra for loop, now that I think about that. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, that's fine. So, now that I've explained sort of what that looks like, now we can look into how to actually upgrade this code to Java 8. Now, I don't exactly want to spend a whole lot of time talking about this because I've already talked about this in episodes, whatever it was, 10 and 11, so I'll just kind of breeze over the code. So essentially all that we need to do here is we need to populate two lists with values, right? Now, normally you could even avoid this approach that I'm doing where I'm breaking this up into two different streams. I'm essentially streaming the offers twice. There's probably a better way to do this, but the actual performance hit that I take is not that big a deal because my list that I'm dealing with, my offers list, is not going to be insane. It's not going to be hundreds of thousands of elements in there, right? Because a person wouldn't purchase hundreds of thousands of courses. Nobody has time to do that. So I made an assumption that the offers list that I'm going to be streaming is going to be a small set of data. So it's okay that I'm essentially, the time that this is going to take to complete is essentially twice as long as the previous for loop, but I'm okay with that because instead of taking 10 milliseconds, it's going to take 20 milliseconds. Okay? I'm not worried about that hit when it comes to that performance. Okay? So, having said that, like I said, I'm getting more readability here, and I'm making use of streams, which is just kind of cool, right? So the same thing happens. I get my list of offers that the user has purchased. Nothing changes there. The difference is now I'm assigning, when I say list, I might create my list of active courses, my array list, I'm not actually initializing it with an empty value. Because before, in the previous code, I'd have to say active courses equals new array list. Okay, so I have an empty array list. Instead, I'm just assigning the value right from the stream. So I'm saying list of course, active courses equals, and then I'm saying offers.stream, and I'm going to stream my active courses right into the active courses list. So it's a bit nicer in terms of, we're assigning it directly. We're not initializing it first. We're just saying, boom, dump all the stuff in there. And when I'm streaming it, I'm filtering by active courses, or rather active offers, I should say. So I use my Lambda expression to filter by active offers. Then I do a map and I get the courses from the offer. I do a flat map on the courses, and then I collect them to a list. That's it. Boom. Now I have my list of active courses. I do the same thing with the non-active courses. I stream the offers, and I filter this time instead by non-active offers. I map the courses, I get the flat map of the courses, and then I collect them to a list, assign it to the non-active courses. Okay? And then there we go. We've got your active courses, your non-active courses, and then all we need to do is the same sort of thing we did above that I realized that we could do, which is, I think, to say non-active courses.remove all active courses. Okay? Assuming that works, there we go. Otherwise, you could also do a stream as well. You could stream and you could filter by the same criteria that I used in my for loop, which was to say, active courses.contains course, and you do a not. So active courses does not contain the particular course that I'm streaming, which is I'm streaming the non-active courses, and I collect those to the list and assign that back to the non-active courses. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I think the other solution that I suggested would work much better. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this code might not even work if I'm not sure actually. I would need to type this in because I think I'd done something a bit different with this code. I'd modified it a bit. Let me pause it and make sure that my initial eureka moment makes sense in terms of the quick and dirty code. 1 second. And there you go, through the magic of post-production. I have determined that yes, it does actually indeed work. All you need to do is say, like I said, non-active courses.remove all active courses, which makes a lot of sense. What you want to do is you want to remove all of the active courses from the non-active courses list. I don't know why I was trying to make that so much more complex than it needed to be. So there we go. We have sort of done what we needed to do. We've transformed our code into Java 8 code. So essentially, technically, what we've done is we've taken something that was 13 lines of code and we turned it into essentially 3 or 4 lines of code. Okay. Now, it doesn't look like 3 or 4 lines of code because I'm putting in line breaks for readability's sake when it comes to doing the stream, so filtering and mapping and flat mapping and collecting and all that stuff. So those do take up the same technically number of lines of code, but they're technically, all one line of code. You can put it all in one line and you're fine. So, you're reducing the number of lines of code that you're writing down, technically. But the real benefit here is the readability. It's just kind of nicer when you're used to dealing with streams. You can look at it, and the functional style of coding really does make it a lot easier to read. The common example is a business analyst walks up to you or a QA person walks up to you and says, "Hey, Trevor, or whoever, what is this code doing here? I'm confused about the sort of the business logic. What is it doing?" And if all you've got is a bunch of for loops, stacked on top of each other, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, hold on, give me a second. Okay, so I'm iterating through and I'm looking at the first thing. Okay, if it's active, then I put it into that list. Otherwise, if it's not, okay, so I'm pretty sure these are doing. Okay, you go through and you do all that, and then you can turn around and say, okay, this is what it's doing. Conversely, with Java 8. They ask you what is it doing, and you'd say, okay, it's filtering the actives, and it's getting those and putting those into a list. It's filtering non-actives, putting those into a list, and then it's removing them. It's like it's easier to look at the code and to say it out loud. It's almost human readable once you get used to the Streams API. It's just a lot more readable, and that is very obvious when it comes to even more complex use cases for for loops. I believe I talked about this in the past, so I won't reiterate it again. But it's just much more readable. Okay. Now, having said that, there's always a discussion that should be had, if you will, on whether or not you need to upgrade these particular for loops from for loops to streams. Sometimes it's an obvious win. Other times, like I said, there is a performance issue when it comes to the code that I've written, namely because I need to iterate. I'm streaming twice, right? So the other for loop, I'm just iterating through it once. But with streams, I'm doing it twice. Now, like I said, I could probably break it up so that it only goes through it once and streams it once, but then it actually becomes a bit less readable, in my opinion. So there's trade-offs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. You jam it in, and everything should be Java 8. Everything should be streams. You should always consider what the new code is going to look like, and you should always consider if you're doubling the number of iterations that you need to go through and iterate through these things. So there's always that consideration that needs to be made, but for me, I think it looks better, it feels better to have it as Java 8. So, and like I said, I'm okay with the performance hit because we're talking milliseconds here. No one's going to notice, and this is not part of some code that's going to be hit, hundreds of thousands of times a day where 10 milliseconds difference will actually start to, add up. So I'm not worried about it. I like it. So I went ahead and did it. Very good. So that's the first sort of area where you can get quick wins when it comes to upgrading your code from Java 7 to 8. Look for for loops. All right. Wherever you see a for loop, it's a possible candidate for upgrading to Java 8. Okay. Now, similarly, the second big tip that I'm going to give to you for upgrading your code from Java 7 to Java 8 is the same easy, quick win spotting some code where you can say, oh, that's a candidate for Java 8. So the next one are called Null Checks. You've seen them before a million times. If you see a check where you're checking to see if a variable equals null, then do something, otherwise do something else. That is primed and ready to go for an upgrade to Java 8. So I can give you an example, and I should say we're using the optional keyword. Optional we learned in, where was it? Episode 12, we learned about the optional keyword. So if you haven't, listened to episode 12 yet, then please do. But yeah, whenever you see a null check, this is a place where you can potentially upgrade it to Java 8 using the optional keyword. So for our example, we have offers that I'm loading from a repository based on an offer ID. So I'm saying offer repository dot find one, and I'm passing in an offer ID. And I'm getting one offer object from the database. Now, sometimes I could possibly be looking for an offer ID that doesn't exist in the database. Who knows? That could happen. So what would happen would be the offer object would be null. Okay, there wouldn't be anything in the offer object because the repository would return null. So if that's the case, I don't want to go further and do operations on the offer to say offer dot is active to check and see if it's active or something. That would cause a null pointer exception. So in order to avoid that scenario, I put in a null check. I say if offer equals null, then do something. So the something I do in this case is I throw an offer not found exception. So I show a nicer sort of error page for the user that says, hey, the offer that you were looking for it doesn't actually exist. Maybe you meant to look for some other offer or something like that. So there we go. That's essentially the workflow for my code. And the code literally looks like I said, if offer equals null, throw new offer not found exception. So we have that null check, and it takes up 3 lines of code. So now that's not fun, because doing null checks everywhere can get very tiring. It can get very unreadable very quickly. So that's why Java introduced the optional keyword. So what we can do to sort of transform this null check with the optional keyword is we do an optional dot of nullable. Okay, there's 2 optionals. Well, there's a few static methods that you can perform on optional, but 2 of the main ones are optional.of and optional.of nullable. So what I do is I do optional.of nullable because the value that we get from our repository find one method, whatever you want to call it, the function that we do here to do offer repository.find one, where we pass in the offer ID, that can return null. So we need to say optional.of nullable because null is an option. So we do optional.of nullable, we do offer repo.find one offer ID, and then what happens is on top of that we can append the or else throw command. Okay, so in the event that the offer repository returns a null, I can do, or it will go into the or else throw, and I can throw a new offer not found exception. Okay, the syntax here is I use a lambda, so I do my open brackets for the lambda, do the lambda expression, I say new offer not found exception, which will do the throwing of the offer not found exception. So all of this we can sort of encapsulate into one line of code, and it sort of guarantees that now with this offer object that we eventually will get at the end, we know that it's not going to be null. We feel safe. We know that there's no way this could possibly be null. There's no guessing games going on here. It's completely safe to do dot properties on the offer object, because if it was null, that situation would have already been handled. Okay? So this null pointer exceptions are the devil. Null pointer exceptions, can bring down an entire application potentially, and it doesn't need to. It doesn't need to bring down an entire application because a value somewhere down the line was null. Okay? Most of the times these stupid nulls come in on some, property of a property, or a property of a child of a parent object that no one cares about. Okay, my buddy who just became a programmer, he was working in his job. This happened to him. He had a null pointer exception. He checked in some code, and there was I believe it was a method or something, and the method had some parameters that were being passed in the method signature, and one of the parameters was null, and he didn't know that it had a possibility of being null. So there was no handling of null stuff in there. There was no null checks. There was no anything. So he went ahead and assumed that it was not null and, did his stuff. And sure enough, he checked it in, and in production, over the weekend, some people that needed to use the system couldn't use the system. So, and what was funny was the thing that was null was inconsequential. It was, like I said, a random property somewhere that they checked to do something that was not really that relevant to the business logic or whatever the case may be. But it brought down the whole system because of a stupid situation with a stupid null that no one cared about. So if you were using the Java 8 optional keyword, if you get into a habit of using it, and you do it right when before you even pass those properties along to another method, that will be handled in such a way that no one will ever have to worry about that ever again. Okay, when you handle your variables using your optional keyword now with Java, it makes everyone's life so much easier. And it makes your code still nice and readable. It doesn't have to have all these if null then, if null then, if not null then, or whatever. It doesn't have to look like that kind of crazy, just ugly looking code. We don't have to deal with that anymore. So fancy stuff. Now, in the case of my example, I don't think I talked about the or else throw in episode whatever it was, 12, I think, where we're talking about optional keyword. I didn't talk about or else throw before, so that's kind of a new one. So I would, you should probably check out the show notes for this episode, coderscampus.com/14, and check out the or else throw syntax there. That's kind of neat. So instead of saying or else, return a default object, you can actually throw an exception. But otherwise, if you wanted to actually return a default value, of course, you can always use the of nullable or optional dot of nullable, your expression, and then dot or else, as opposed to or else throw. Say or else, and you can say, return a blank new offer or something like that. So that's something that you can do as well, and that will sort of appease the gods, if you will, of programming if you don't want to throw an exception. So that's always an option. But like I said, we talked about that in episode 12 for the dot or else, so you should be familiar with that one already. Okay, so there you go. That is sort of the breakdown of the two really quick, really easy ways that you could spot code in your existing application that is Java 8 upgradable, right? So very cool stuff. And I mean, already, based on, there's also default methods. We talked about that, I think, in the last episode. You're already making use of default methods because of, the core Java code had to make use of a lot of default methods in their interfaces, namely in collections and whatnot. So you're already benefiting from those upgrades, if you will, in your code base as soon as you upgrade to Java 8. That's pretty cool stuff. But of course, if you're someone who deals with publishing libraries and whatnot, then quick wins for you will be able to make use of default methods in your interfaces so that you don't break other programmers' code to make it sort of backwards compatible. So that's always nice too if you're dealing with libraries and whatnot. But that's just that's a sort of a smaller subset of programmers that deal with creating libraries for public use and whatnot. So not as many people will benefit from that one, and the people who will benefit from that one probably already know that they should be using default methods now because you can backwards compatibility is always a nice thing. So there you go. Hope you like that. Like I said, check out the show notes at coderscampus.com/14. And as always, if you haven't done so already, I know a few people have, which has been great. I would love for you to go and leave a rating and review in iTunes for this Coders Campus podcast. It's what keeps us free. Okay, getting the reviews out there and getting them published allows other people to find this, these shows, and the more people that listen to this, the bigger the audience I have, the more emphasis I will put on creating these episodes for free. Okay, I absolutely love to record these, but I am so busy right now. I've actually planned out what the next. I've been doing 90-day sprints, if you will. I probably shouldn't call them sprints because that's a curse word when it comes to agile methodology and programming. Let's call them 90-day years. So I'm essentially packing in the work of an entire 12-month period into 90 days to force myself to be super productive. So I am insanely busy now these days. I'm doing nothing but work, producing content for people in Coders Campus and so on and so forth, all these other projects that I have going on. I'm very busy. So, seeing these ratings and reviews come in and seeing more and more people listening to the Coders Campus podcast as the days go on, it really reaffirms how useful this is to my business and how I should get on this microphone and start recording shows. So, yes, thank you. I will not grovel anymore. I will beg and grovel, but I will say, please leave a rating review if you haven't done so already. It really doesn't take that long. I think you can go to whatever it is, coderscampus.com/iTunes, I think is the link. Or you just go to iTunes, okay? Go to iTunes, search for the show, click on the show, and then you click on the ratings and review tab and, write a review. Okay? It's a few annoying steps, I know, but it really only takes maybe 60 to 120 seconds of your life, and it really makes a massive difference. If every single person who listened to these episodes left a rating and a review, I wouldn't have to ask anymore. I guess that's kind of like the public radio, ask. If everyone just donated $1 or whatever they always ask, then we wouldn't have to do this anymore. Or no, it's Wiki. Wiki says that. They always put their banners on the top saying, if everyone just donated $1, we'd be done. Same thing here. If everyone just left a rating review, which doesn't cost you anything except for a couple seconds of your life, this would be a moot point. I would have the best programming podcast on iTunes, and I'd be jumping for joy, and everyone would be happy. So that's all I'll say about that. Thank you so much. I will now leave it to the outro lady to reaffirm the exact same message I just gave to you while she asked you to leave me a rating and a review. So thank you so much for listening to episode 14. Check out the show notes, coderscampus.com/14. Leave a rating and review, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Coders Campus podcast. But before you go, Trevor has a favor to ask you. In order to keep these episodes free, he'd love for you to leave a rating and review the podcast on iTunes. Just go to coderscampus.com/review to leave your own rating and review of the show. So if you have 30 seconds to spare right now, please help out by leaving a rating and review via coderscampus.com/review. It will ensure that you continue to get these awesome free podcast episodes each and every week. So if you like free swag, head on over to coderscampus.com/review. Happy learning!